Millions of years ago, if you had stood on Earth and looked around, you would hardly recognize the planet. There were no forests stretching across the land, no birds flying through the sky, no animals running across fields, no humans building cities. The Earth was a lonely and hostile world. The oceans covered much of the planet, but they were not the bright blue oceans we know today. The atmosphere was thick with strange gases. Volcanoes erupted constantly, releasing clouds of smoke and chemicals into the sky. And most surprisingly of all, there was almost no oxygen. Today, every breath you take contains oxygen. Your brain needs it. Your heart needs it. Every cell in your body depends on it. Without oxygen, most modern life would die within minutes. But billions of years ago, oxygen was nearly absent. If a human somehow traveled back in time, they would struggle to breathe almost immediately. The air would feel alien and dangerous. Yet life already existed. Tiny microscopic organisms floated through the ancient oceans. They were simple, fragile, and seemingly unimportant. No one would have guessed that these tiny creatures were about to change the destiny of an entire planet. Among them was a remarkable type of organism known today as cyanobacteria. These microscopic life forms possessed a powerful ability. They could capture energy from sunlight. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, they created their own food. It was one of the most revolutionary inventions in the history of life. But there was a side effect. Whenever they produced food, they released a waste gas. That waste gas was oxygen. At first, oxygen seemed insignificant. The oceans absorbed it. Rocks absorbed it. Iron dissolved in seawater reacted with it. Every bit of oxygen that was produced quickly disappeared. For millions of years, the tiny organisms continued their work. Day after day, century after century, million year after million year, the planet slowly changed. The cyanobacteria spread across the oceans. Their numbers grew larger and larger. They covered vast areas of the sea, constantly releasing oxygen into the environment. Still, Earth showed little sign of transformation. But deep beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. The rocks were becoming saturated. The oceans could absorb no more. The planet was slowly reaching its limit. Then came a turning point. For the first time in Earth's history, oxygen began escaping into the atmosphere faster than it could be removed. The sky itself started to change. The amount of oxygen rose higher and higher. What seems like wonderful news to us today was terrifying news for many living things back then. Most ancient organisms had evolved in a world without oxygen. To them, oxygen was not life-giving. It was poisonous as oxygen spread across the planet. Countless organisms faced a deadly threat they had never encountered before, the very gas that would one day allow humans, animals, and forests to exist was becoming a silent killer. A catastrophe was approaching without realizing it. Tiny organisms no larger than specks of dust had triggered one of the greatest environmental transformations in Earth's history. The world was about to change forever, and many forms of life would not survive the transition. The age of oxygen had begun. The oxygen kept rising, day after day, year after year, million year after million year. The tiny cyanobacteria continued releasing oxygen into the oceans and atmosphere. They had no idea what they were doing. They were simply surviving. But their survival was becoming a disaster for countless other forms of life. Too many ancient organisms. Oxygen was a deadly poison. Their cells had evolved in a world without it. They had never needed oxygen and had no defenses against its destructive effects. As oxygen levels increased, entire populations began to disappear. Some organisms retreated deep beneath the oceans. Others buried themselves underground. Many simply vanished forever. Earth was experiencing one of the first great extinction events in its history. Scientists call this event the Great Oxygenation Event. It happened about 2.4 billion years ago and changed the planet forever. Imagine being alive during that time. Generation after generation would notice their world becoming more dangerous. Places that were once safe became deadly. The air itself was changing. For many organisms, there was nowhere to escape. The invisible gas spreading across the planet was unstoppable. But while oxygen was destroying some forms of life, it was creating opportunities for others. A few organisms discovered something remarkable. Instead of fearing oxygen, they learned how to use it. These organisms could extract far more energy from food than their competitors. They grew faster. They became stronger. They adapted to the new world. For the first time, life had access to an incredibly powerful energy source. And that changed everything. Meanwhile, something incredible was happening high above the Earth. Some oxygen molecules rose into the upper atmosphere. There, sunlight transformed them into a new gas, ozone. Slowly, an ozone layer began forming around the planet. This invisible shield protected Earth from much of the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation. Before the ozone layer existed, dangerous radiation constantly bombarded the planet's surface. Now, life had protection. For the first time, Earth was becoming a safer place for more complex organisms to evolve. The transformation was astonishing. The same oxygen that had caused a mass extinction was now building a shield in the sky. It was both a destroyer and a creator. Over millions of years, oxygen levels continued to rise. The atmosphere slowly began to resemble the one we know today. The oceans changed. The skies changed. Life changed. And because of that change, something extraordinary became possible. Complex organisms. Creatures with specialized cells. Creatures that could move, hunt, see, and think. Without the Great Oxygenation Event, animals might never have evolved. Dinosaurs might never have existed. Humans might never have appeared. Every breath you take today is connected to those tiny cyanobacteria that lived billions of years ago. The organisms that nearly destroyed life on Earth also made complex life possible. What looked like a catastrophe was actually the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's story, but an even greater challenge was coming, a challenge so extreme that it may have frozen nearly the entire planet A, world covered in ice, a world known as Snowball Earth.